looking forward to talking to Dr. Linda Lorenzo. Before we begin, we're on the land of the Darambil people, and I would like to acknowledge the forefathers, foremothers, past, present and emerging, as the custodians of these lands, and in the spirit of reconciliation, I would like to thank them for letting us have this conversation. Mea nu tatu, whakatakateho ki te uru, whakatakateho ki te tunga, kia makina kina ki uta, kia matara ki tai, e hei aka ana te takura, hei tio, hei huka, hei hauhu, ti hei Māori ora. So Linda, you've worked in the theatre branch, and one of my favourite playwrights is Bertolt Brecht. And he had this piece which people don't talk about. It's about refugees. It was Conversations. Two refugees meet in Denmark in what is the Second World War, and they just come and talk. And for Brecht, working in the world of theatre was not about emotion. It was rarely about having fun and having a good time. It was about coming in and thinking about things. So what kind of theatre person are you? Who are you?
Oh, who am I? Well, I guess in terms of Brecht, I think his work is essential. And I actually, with our Bachelor of Theatre students, we do a term on Brecht with the drama ensemble. And yeah, we've done that twice now in the time that I've been here, and that's been a really interesting process and discovery for the students, because they're not familiar with that whole style of theatre. But for me, I mean, my background is quite mixed. I studied education. I was previously a performer, and then I ended up in the sort of national perspective of the arts industry. I worked for Bell Shakespeare, I worked for the Sydney Symphony, and I worked on the national arts curriculum for ACARA. Through the course of that, acquired a PhD and was very lucky to land this very creative position at the Mackay campus.
So if you were helping people understand your way into theatre, did you wake up one morning and say, I'm going to do theatre or acting? What is your story? How did you get to this stage?
I don't know. I think my parents probably would have said, well, she was a bit of a drama queen as a child, maybe. I learned piano. I loved making up plays with my friends at school, that sort of thing. And then as I progressed, in my years and so on, it was going to shows and going to the theatre. And then once I was at university in my undergraduate degree, I really became interested in the idea of storytelling from the stage, I guess initially is where it is. And then further on in life, and then when I worked for a while as a drama teacher, it was really the importance of stories and how we tell stories and how we pass on knowledge and we develop relationships. There's, the arts support society.
Did you feel that as you gradually developed your skill set, it was about technique, or was it about many facets? I mean, you mentioned writing. Is that what you envisage with theatre for people if they're entering this world? Multi-skill?
Yeah, I think definitely today you need to be multi-skilled. I mean, I remember for me, as part of my studies, I studied opera. And when I was at the conservatorium doing that, we had to learn languages. And I hadn't really learnt languages in school. And when I'd been in primary school and early high school, that was the period where grammar and sort of the names of the parts of language weren't really taught. So I discovered that by learning languages for opera, I learned the structure, the grammatical structure of English that I'd never really learned. So to then end up, in university trying to teach people about reading scripts and reading and writing and so on, I guess it's another different world. But at the end of the day, I think for me, it's the script or the score is there as the map to lead you into that story.
So if we go back to Bertolt Brecht, of course, what he was saying that normally you go to theatre and you identify with the actors or the storyline and you get a kind of a good feeling or you cry, and it's a way of kind of catharsis or releasing emotion. What does that aspect of theatre mean for you? Not the Brecht piece, but that kind of having a good time or emotions. Is that an important part for you in either being an actress or teaching it?
Definitely. You know, particularly, well, with any of the art forms, but with theatre, yeah, it's Brecht aside, because he's using a whole different technique. But when we see a film, when we see television, when we watch a play, we do connect with or disconnect from characters. And often it's that we actually see something of ourselves reflected in those characters. You know, whether it's an experience they're having, whether it's something about the character themselves. And you know, and I think there's a huge amount of empathy that we really develop in ourselves by being open to going to different theatrical experiences.
And you'll often hear this, people will say, I haven't got the energy to go to theatre, I'd rather watch TV, or I'd rather watch a movie. What do you say when people say that to you?
I say, yes, sometimes I feel like that too. And it's actually not that you'd rather watch a different form, it's that you'd just rather be in the comfort of your own space. I had this situation last night. So Matt Young, who's directing the production for us this term with the theatre students, is up in Mackay, and we'd seen that Circa, a physical theatre dance company, is touring Queensland. They were performing in Mackay last night at 6 o'clock, which is a very early time, but some of these regional towns, you know, time can be quite fluid. And so Matt and I had agreed that if we managed to finish with the rehearsal and what I was doing in time, we would go. And we left the university at 10 to 6. I mean, and as I was told when I moved to Mackay, everything's 10 minutes away, which is pretty well true. So we got to the entertainment centre at 6, but then we had to buy tickets. And then it turned out there was a lockout for the beginning of the show, which we thought, well, that's perfect, because then we won't be the rude people walking in. We'll be with anyone else who's late going in together. And the bar was still open. So we were able to take in a glass of wine, go in a couple of minutes late, and it was about a 75-minute performance, and it was riveting. And I was really glad that I didn't just go home and turn on the television.
I suppose where I'm going with that is that we've become accustomed in that kind of COVID time, everything is communicated through a screen. And what I'm really kind of saying is, do you think we've become too accustomed to that in a way? Do you think it's almost like in our human nature to want to actually not go through a screen? We've just forgotten how to engage with theatre?
Yes, I think there is an element of that. I think, you know, prior to COVID, we had become a society where everything was accessible all the time. You know, and we had big cinemas with lots of screens, so you could go to any number of films, and then of course having a large screen at home, so you could watch things on your own home television. But I think that plus COVID has changed the way people experience live performance, if you like. And I know actually from talking to friends in the industry down in Sydney and in Melbourne that it has been actually very slow to pick up again. People haven't
quite got the hang
been going out. And now with what's happening in the country financially, again, the first thing that people do is step back from the things that are considered the extras or the luxuries. And so ticket sales again are down in live performance in the major capital cities.
Interesting. I think in our next conversation we're probably going to pick up some of these threads again, because I know you've been doing some really interesting work in TikTok and commonly known as the TikTok generation. So I'm quite excited to hear exactly how does a theatre person get to work in the TikTok world. But for another conversation, thank you.